Material for the brain. Conversations for thinking bodies. In this show, together with our guests, we explore different ways in which we can develop a meaningful relationship with our bodies and minds and respond to the current state of the culture in a quest for more integrated and embodied perspectives. Hello and welcome to Material for the Brain podcast. This is Matan Levkowich. Hello everyone, and today I'm recording a solo episode that will focus on the topic of inclusivity. And before we will dive into that, just a quick reminder for those who are listening that within the Movement Lab in the month of June, we are having several open events. One is our Movement Lab Open Day that will happen on the 12th of June at 5:30. It's a free event in which you can familiarize yourself with our teachers team, with our spirit of the school, and just experience directly the transformative power of dance. You will have in the show notes a link to register to this event. And we also have our end of the year performances coming on the 24th, 5th, and 6th of June. 3 consecutive evenings in which we will display the result of the All and Beyond study group, the ensemble program in which I've been choreographing together with the students, full evening performance. I will also leave in the show notes a link to get tickets and hopefully see you there in reality, in physical reality. And let's start with today's episode. I want to talk about inclusivity. And I want to a bit set the context where I'm coming from and why I wanted to initiate that conversation. So I just came back from a festival called Contact in Paradise, which was an event dedicated for the practice of contact improvisation. It was, in this year edition, it was a tribute to all the teachers who've been contributing for the field of contact improvisation in Austria. And despite the fact that I'm not primarily teaching contact improvisation, I'm as you might be aware of our activities in the Movement Lab, I have been promoting and teaching CI in different formats over the last 10 years here in Austria. And I was also invited to the festival, and the festival also featured Nita Little, who is one of the founders of contact improvisation, and also been a guest already twice in this podcast, and is a good friend and a conversational partner for me. And during the event, beside teaching, I offered the talk Consensual CI and the Gem Egregore, which was also available here on the podcast, in which I speak about different strategies how to approach safety, physical and emotional safety in contact improvisation gems. And during the conversation, Nita Little was present, and also another guy named Christian Felber, who was also on my podcast. And during the conversation, they started commenting, and they developed a little discussion. And then one of the organizers of the event asked us maybe we would be able to hold another discussion, open discussion, just the three of us, because she really enjoyed listening to us exchanging ideas. And then we were thrown into that request, and we were thinking, okay, what should we talk about? And we decided to speak about what are the values that are the driving force of our work, each one independently, and from that to develop a discussion. And during this conversation, I was mentioning the topic of inclusivity. I've shared that the fact that I am speaking in front of everyone in the context of dance is part of the fact that within the contact improvisation world, inclusivity is an important value. And that enabled me to transform my life from not being a dancer to start participating in dance events, in the beginning primarily CI events, and eventually to take on that journey of becoming a professional dancer. So I really honor that value, and again, because it really affected my own life. And that's also what I'm trying or attempting to practice within the context of the Movement Lab, how to make a space which will be inclusive for everyone who wants to study with us. And that was kind of the premise of that conversation. I didn't dive too deeply into that topic of inclusivity in that conversation, in the festival. But then on the next day, we had some other conversation with other teachers and participants, and somebody gave me the feedback that yes, even within the movement lab, some people don't feel comfortable to participate, and they don't feel safe because you and Julie, who is another senior teacher in the movement lab, are primarily focusing on the physical aspect of the practice of contact improvisation, and many people need much more emotional support and need much more acknowledgement of the, let's say, the inner processes that they are going in order to feel comfortable joining. Which I'm always happy to get some feedback and critique about the movement lab, because of course, without knowing what people are thinking or experiencing, it's very hard to improve anything. But it made me also think about like, okay, what are we doing? In my estimation, the movement lab is not exclusively like a physical training space. We do talk a lot about how the practice affects us also internally, not only on what we can display physically, but nonetheless, if that's some people experience, that's valid. Of course, we are not perfect. But I was really thinking, okay, what does it mean then to be inclusive? Or like, what are the different ways we can think about inclusivity? And as a starting point, I wanted to differentiate between, let's say, what I will call voluntary inclusivity and maybe something like missionary inclusivity or evangelic inclusivity. And I'll tell you, I'll break it down what I mean. So participatory inclusivity for me would mean that as a matter of policy and attitude, everybody is welcome to join the space, and that there are really small to non-existing parameters that will inhibit the participation of somebody in a space. So for example, I'll just again point to the movement lab. If you want to study with us, then the only thing we request from you is your commitment, so that you are willing to commit for a year of studying with us. And within that commitment, there's also a possibility to withdraw your commitment. And that's the only parameter that might limit you. The second parameter would be finance. There is a certain financial commitment from the participant side, from the student side. So you have to pay a tuition, which of course could be a limiting factor. We had 1 year scholarship program. So there was also somebody who studied in the movement lab with kind of a work exchange. So in principle, that's how we set up the space. And then, so if you're motivated and you want to, you can take certain amount of personal responsibilities and govern and organize your life, and then you can be part of the movement lab. So if you want to participate, you can, but you have to be active to have the wish to take part. In our weekly jam, for example, we have a little bit more of a limited inclusivity. So we say, okay, everybody is welcome, but if you don't have any experience in contact improvisation, then you can only watch. You cannot join the jam. Which, when I share that perspective in my topic on safety, so Christian Felber commented that it's a little bit like how we deal with driving license. So everybody can walk in the street, but if you want to drive, since it requires taking a greater responsibility and managing risks, then you need a license, which this is how we perceive it a bit in the movement lab. Okay, if you never danced CI before, then we cannot assume that you will be able to take the responsibilities that are required from every participant, but you can still watch. But it doesn't mean that you are excluded forever. It just means that you need to take a certain path, a certain educational path, and then you will be able to join. So again, this is what I call participatory inclusion. So it's like everybody is welcome, but there's certain things you have to do if you want to be in the space, no? And And missionary inclusion or evangelic inclusion, I mean, I'm saying it a bit as a joke, is the notion that it's not only that everybody is welcome, but everybody should come. And this is something that very often I encounter around people who have a little bit more, let's say, either ideological perspective about the practice, or that they're simply maybe more like in this phase of naivety where you are exposed to a practice and you're so excited about it. And then you feel like, wow, everybody should experience the bliss that I'm experiencing. And then you start getting into that frame in which you advocate that it's not that everybody is welcome, but really everybody should come to practice. We should really bring everybody into the practice. So you are trying to convert as many people into your belief system, into your or to share the practice, the physical practice, which most of the time also, underlines that there is a certain, let's say, values or belief that you want to promote in the world. And this is a different form of inclusivity, because when you enter that space, it's not only that you're happy if people come, you actively want to bring as many people in. So you are making active steps to include more and more people. And some people might look at it and will say like, wow, that's full of virtue, because you enjoy the benefits of a space. And it's not only that you say everybody is welcome, you really make steps of bringing people in. But I personally have a few issues with that, which I will be happy to explore with you today. So I think, like, first of all, if let's start with the easy thing to tackle when you're just a bit naive and you just started something, and it's very natural. I remember, if I'm kind of talking from my own experiences, so I remember when I was young, when I was 21, I did my first Vipassana meditation retreat, 10 days silent retreat. And I came back mind blown and like, oh my God, I understand it all now. And immediately I started to talk to my mom and try to tell her how great it is and how she must do it, blah, blah, blah. And that didn't really work well. And I think that one of the reasons why that kind of naive desire to include actively more people in whatever you're doing doesn't work most of the time, because you haven't really embodied what you're talking about. So maybe you got really excited and you think like, oh my God, this practice is amazing, and it really offers me a deep way to happiness, to joy, to groundness, to tranquility, to positivity, whatever is that you're after, but you haven't really embodied it yet. So you're not really yet the example of what you're talking about. And then that very often leads to a certain gap between what you preach and how you are, no? And in my case, I was really advocating for Vipassana because it can really help you to be more calm and more in awareness to your own patterns of reaction to your emotions and to stimulus from the outside, etc. But I wasn't really an example of somebody who is really living with a calm mind that is always able to observe instead of react. So I was the same person, more or less, before the retreat and after the retreat, maybe with just an inch of a difference. But I was already kind of trying to tell everybody how amazing it is without even displaying the qualities that I claim that the practice can bring, which, in Hebrew there is a saying, Maim shketim chodrim amok, which means quiet water runs deep. And that phrase is kind of pointing to that people who really know something, they don't need to talk about it all the time. That's why I do the podcast, because for me talking is I'm exploring. So I'm exploring together with you. I don't know, but I want to explore something. So I need to talk about it. But when I know something, I don't need to talk about it so much, because it's already so clear for me. So I don't need to run it through that process of thinking, getting feedback from the outside. I know it. And then when you know something, you don't necessarily want to push everybody in that direction, and you don't need to and maybe it's also a little bit that when you have a certain experience of something that is positive in your life, and you think like, hey, I want more people to come, there's also a certain, like confirmation bias that you're getting from the environment, because if everybody's like, yes, I also want to join, wow, it's also amazing, so it also confirms to your experience, and you say like, okay, it's not only me, it's many people who believes in that. Many people actually experience what I'm experiencing. And just to point, like to another field of research, marketing. In marketing, the main reason that people buy products is because other people are buying products or services in that regard. So the most powerful thing that drives humans to engage in certain things is the fact that other humans are also engaging in the same thing. So you can understand why that can strengthen you on the level of, let's say, your individual psychology, and feeling more comfortable with the fact that you have taken a certain path and you decided to commit in a certain direction that maybe isn't popular, or maybe it's a bit less mainstream, and then you're like, you want to kind of get the support of the environment as well. So the more people are joining, the more you feel like, hey, it makes sense what I'm doing. So that's kind of the first point that I have with this kind of, as I said, missionary inclusivity. But that comes from naivety, and most people, you just give them enough time and that behavior disappears. And there's something also sweet about it. You see somebody who's so enthusiastic, and you think, okay, let's give them some time to cook within the practice and see where they land in a year. But it's sweet. I don't find it kind of problematic. It's just a bit naive. But the other one, this kind of people who are embedded in a certain more ideological framework, and from that point of view, they believe, okay, we should really bring everybody in. I think that creates kind of more problems. First, because it doesn't disappear with the, let's say, it's not related to experience, and you can stop being naive and still advocate for that form of inclusivity. But I think that first it kind of overlook a certain reality that is present within each practice. I mean, which is that no practice have created a perfect environment for everyone that fits for everyone. So in the notion that you believe that everybody should practice something, you're already presupposing that there is a value system that would fit everyone, which that's a very tricky position to be in. Now let's explore it a bit more. So why do I think like that? Because, again, if I argue that there is a practice that everyone should benefit, so then it means that, in principle, I believe that something in this practice is pointing to a universal quality that no matter who you are, which background you're coming from, what your age, identity, whatever, language, culture, there will be something there that will touch you on our shared humanity, and therefore you should, or it will be great for you to do that. And I want to make sure that there's no obstacle for you, and to promote it, that you would come. Now, that's a very challenging position to be in, because most of the time we don't make the effort of questioning whether our values are actually pointing in any universal direction. And that's and then there is a certain paradox between my position that claims for this universality, but my particular case around my values, which are not necessarily universal. And then there is a big conflict there. And if you don't address this conflict, then I think that you're advocating from a place of ignorance to the work that you're doing. Now I don't believe that there is such a thing as an all-inclusive space. That's my position. I think that inclusivity, the act of naming inclusivity as a value and pointing, for me, it's important that inclusivity will exist, already points to a certain exclusion that I'm doing. I'm excluding other values. So by saying the space should be inclusive, I'm excluding the value of exclusivity, because for some people, making a space very exclusive could be a value. I want to make a space that is only open for the most sincere and dedicated practitioners, and not for everybody who is just like a hobbyist. That could be a value in a space. If you say, okay, I'm doing a contact improvisation retreat in which I want to invite, let's take the example of Nita Little, again, like one of the founders of CI, and I want to make it very exclusive, that only people that are super serious and can take the depth of Nita's work will be there, so that we could really dive deep into the practice. So then it's like, okay, that could be a value that could bring a beautiful event in the world. So when you say, I want my event to be inclusive, you already excluded one possibility of how you could set up the space. So therefore, it's not anymore on a very meta level. Inclusivity didn't exist because you excluded certain values. And by excluding certain values, you exclude certain people, or you are driving certain people away from the practice. Which, again, if you advocate for this missionary inclusivity, where you really think that everybody should come, again, like, then there is a certain contradiction between your actions. Now it's very different if you say, okay, I want to make it accessible for people who are interested, and these are my values, and I know it's not going to fit for everybody, but it's still open for everybody who is aligning himself or herself with those values. Then again, like, there's no limitation on the ability, but I need to have a wish or a desire or a certain alignment with what the space is offering in order to take part of the activity, which is very different starting point. And I think that it's that's a little bit the hidden, let's say, trap with the notion of inclusivity. That an unlimited inclusivity means you have to be able to welcome all the different values, even that they're contradicting, into a space. And then the space is fully inclusive. Everything can come in the space. There's no boundaries. And that maybe would be like, that pure inclusivity. But by doing it, you're also destroying the value that you are trying to promote, because you would also welcome values that will contradict that. So I don't think that space exists. And I think that there is something much more rewarding about first setting your own values straight. And when you know why you want to do something in the world, and it's clear for you what motivates your values, then just advocate for those values, knowing that, some people won't be attracted. For some people, your values will be the reason why they would feel excluded. And that's inevitable. It doesn't mean that you are exclusive. It just means that you chose to focus on certain things. And part of the act of choosing is constructing certain hierarchy of things that are in and things that are out. And by the fact that you don't explicitly say that certain people aren't allowed, then you're still in the realm of inclusivity, limited inclusivity. But you're not kind of operating from, maybe instead of missionary inclusivity, we can also call it idealistic inclusivity, where you kind of really believe that there is a space that would fit everyone. And again, I don't think that that's the case. Now, another thing that I've recognized, and that's maybe a more particular comment on the culture of dance and CI and contact improvisation and contemporary dance around inclusivity, that there is a certain creation of an hierarchy, and mostly it's unconscious, between those who need more support, therapeutically speaking, than those who don't. And what do I mean by that? So when I got the comment of like, hey, in your space, some people don't feel comfortable because they feel like they need much more attention to feel safe around how the practice affects them, and you don't provide it. Therefore, you're not inclusive enough. It kind of overlook on the fact that there are many people that don't need that support. And for them, a space that is centered around that support is not anymore interesting. And they don't want to take part because it's not what is in their core values. It's not what in their interest. And then the space is becoming less inclusive for them. So again, like if I come, and that's kind of my attitude, I would say, like if you come to the Movement Lab and you decide to study with us, in all our programs, we teach certain amount of solo material, certain amount of partnering material. We work with physical touch, we work with physical forces. And let's say you are in a position in which you're extremely triggered by being physically touched by other people. So touch is a huge, huge topic for you. And maybe you say, hey, I want to come to the Movement Lab because I want to work on touch. That happened in the past. Fair enough. But I would say that if you have like a huge, huge trauma around physical touch that makes you extremely triggered, then it's probably not the right space for you because we are not focusing on that. Now, does it make it less inclusive? In your case, yes, because you are looking for something more therapeutic. But calling it a space that is not inclusive enough, it's a bit like if you come to a Italian restaurant and you ask, I want to have sushi, and they tell you, sorry, we don't serve sushi here. And then you say like, your restaurant is not inclusive enough for Japanese cuisine. It's exclusive for Japanese cuisine. That's the equivalent. Because, at the end of the day, you have to focus what do you want to promote in the world and what is the thing that you want to focus. And in the Movement Lab, we feel that people who have the capacity to handle the physical, emotional challenges that arise to the level that they can take responsibility on the challenges, because, I'm not saying that everybody who comes, nobody is getting challenged, of course, but that you feel like, hey, I'm strong enough to deal with whatever will come, at least in your intention. Then we are in it's a different ballgame. Then if you come and you say like, hey, I don't know what will happen and I might completely need support because I wouldn't know where I am. And in that case, we as Movement Lab, we will have to be able to provide a better therapeutic setting to contain your experiences within the Movement Lab, which we are not, because none of us are therapists. It's not where our competencies points towards. I am a professional dancer. I'm a movement teacher, and my expertise and the analysis of how kinetic energy and physical forces interact with your body, mind, and your imagination and your physicality. So that's what I do. Yeah, so I think it's I made my point here, and I hope you can take something from it. And if you have any questions or comments, I would be happy to see. Maybe I'm missing something with my perspective. And that's it. I wish you a beautiful day, and I'll see you on the next episode. If you want to see more precious and insightful moments, make sure to check our short clips playlist. To see longer interviews, check out the full episode playlist just below it. And to be notified for all future videos, click the subscribe button and don't forget to hit the notification bell. See you on the next episode.